Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be making one of these houses. Each one of these houses is basically made with the same principle. This tutorial is going to be aimed at very new beginners. So if you're brand new to Blender and you're still trying to work your way around it, this is a great place to start. These are actually also low poly. We're going to be doing this in two lessons. The first we're going to be modeling it, and the next we're going to be putting materials on it. And we're going to be kind of doing it in a cheater kind of way, because I'm focusing on beginners only. So we're going to be using an add-on called Blender Kit, but we're going to go into that on the next episode. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to scale down our cube by pressing S, Z, 0.05. And then we're going to scale it on the Y by pressing SY, 0.3. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to scale it on the x-axis by pressing S, X, and 2. Now we're going to press 7 on the numpad to go into top orthographic view. We're going to kind of position it about here. And we're going to press Shift D to duplicate. And then we're just going to drag it up with our mouse. And I'm keeping it on the y-axis by middle clicking. We're going to duplicate it again until we have about 6 of these planks. Alright, perfect. So now we're going to shift click each one of these planks, and we're going to press tab to get into edit mode. Just a heads up, if you're using 2.79, you will not be able to shift click and go into edit mode this way. We're going to go ahead and add some geometry. So we're going to add, let's do 4 loop cuts by pressing Ctrl R over the object, and then just scrolling up on the mouse wheel until you get to 4. Then you're going to left click and right click. And we're going to do that for each one of these. That one I actually added 5. That is no big deal. I'm just doing this to give it some shape. I'm going to go ahead and add a loop cut down this way. Control R. I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of random. Sometimes I'm scrolling the mouse wheel, sometimes I am not. Remember, with loop cuts, you just right click and then, or left click and then right click to select it and then drop it in the middle. Okay, so with that being done, we're going to go ahead and press A twice, or A once, to deselect everything. Then we're going to press C, and we're just for circle select, and we're just going to randomly click some of these vertices here. And we're just basically going to kind of deform the wood a little bit so it's not perfectly straight. Because in real life, wood is not perfectly straight. If you ever go down to Home Depot and take a look at it, those woods are crooked. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just scale this in just a tiny bit. Nothing crazy, just enough to give it a little bit of warp. Now I'm going to press A again to deselect, C to circle select, and we're just going to pick a couple random vertices again. And we're going to actually rotate these once we get our vertices selected. So we're going to press R to rotate, and then we're going to rotate on the x-axis. And we're just going to do a little bit, nothing crazy. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now we've got those objects made. We're going to go ahead. If you have everything selected like this, press Shift D to duplicate. I'm going to drag it along here. And then I'm just going to left click and kind of drag across here. I'm going to select those 3. We're going to duplicate them. And we're just going to kind of keep working down the line until we have our back wall created. I'm picking different boards to give it a little bit of an inconsistent feeling. Now I am going to move these boards closer to each other because I don't really want any gaps, or as little gaps as possible. So I'm just pressing G and Y to move them on the Y-axis. That looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and left click and highlight all of these. We're going to rotate them on the Y by pressing RY 90 degrees. And then we're going to press 3 on the numpad to get into right orthographic. I'm going to press G and Z, and we're going to move them just above the y-axis there. And I'm actually going to go ahead and grab a couple more duplicated. We're going to make it a little bit longer, so I'm just Shift D and then middle mouse click. Perfect. Now we're going to hit Shift D again, and then I'm going to press R, Z, 90. And then I'm going to press 7 on the numpad so we can get top orthographic, and G to grab these and move them. And I'm just going to duplicate those again, and then I'm dragging them over in the x-axis. Not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of these Press Shift D, and we're going to just drag it all the way down here on the X-axis. About there. Then we're going to grab these. Press 7 again, Shift D. I'm going to put them right about there. And then I'm going to grab a different set. Pressing 7 on the numpad, and then Shift D to duplicate. About there, and then 3 on the numpad to get them a little bit tighter. So GY. And then we're going to grab, let's grab just these 4 here. Shift D to duplicate. And you guys are more than welcome to, in fact, I encourage you to do a little bit different. You know, you don't have to make it exactly the same as mine. Okay, not too bad. Actually, we have a big gap right there, so let's go ahead and fix that gap. You may or may not have a gap. If you did it right the first time, you won't. You'll soon realize that when it comes to modeling in Blender, there's going to be a lot of minor details that you're going to spend a lot of time on that doesn't sound fun. And that's because it really isn't, but that is part of modeling. It's just getting things to look the way you want. So I'm just kind of finessing it a little bit. Okay, not too bad. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make the A-frames for the roof. So I'm just selecting this object. I'm going to press S or Shift S to put cursor to selected, so it's going to bring our 3D cursor in here, so any material or objects that we bring in will appear right there. So I'm going to hit Shift A, go to Mesh, go to Cube, and I'm going to drag it up on the X-axis by pressing GX. I'm going to put it right about there because I'm going to scale it down by pressing S. To about there. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to move it a little bit closer to the center. Then I'm going to scale it on the X-axis by pressing SX. I'm going to scale it a little bit bigger than our building here. Actually, I'm going to scale it down as well. But this time I'm going to scale it and press Shift X or Shift Y so we don't scale on the anything. We will scale it on everything but the Y-axis. Alright, that doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to go back into 1 on the numpad. Press Tab to get into editor mode. Control R to add a loop cut. Left click, right click. Now we're going to press G and Z to move this up on the Z axis to about there. Now I'm pressing A twice to select everything because I'm going to reposition this a little bit. To about there. I'm going to go ahead and press Tab to get out of edit mode. 7 on the numpad. And we're going to move this to about there. So I'm going to press G. I'm middle mouse clicking to keep it on the Y axis. Then I'm going to Shift D to duplicate. I'm going to just bring it up. Where did it go? That went way over there. GY. I'm going to put it right about there. That looks pretty good. Yep, that looks good. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and shift click both of these. Press Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to press Control R, and then I'm going to scroll on the mouse wheel twice to make a couple loop cuts. I'm going to do that on each one of these boards, 2 loop cuts. And then I'm going to click on here to click face. I'm going to click this face and this face, and I'm going to extrude, and then I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to press S to scale on the Y. I'm going to bring them right next to each other. And then we're going to do the same thing on here. And we're going to extrude it, right click, and then scale on the Y by pressing S and Y. I'm going to go back into vertex select mode. We're going to press this vertex and this one, and then these two, and then we're going to press F, which does not seem to be working. Let's go back into face mode here, and let's delete these faces. So click this face and shift click this face, and then press X and delete faces. Let's do the same thing on this one while we're here. Get rid of our faces, vertex mode. That is very weird. Oh, you know what that was? Because it is two different objects. So let's go ahead and get out of edit mode. And we're going to press Control P to parent these two objects together. I'm sorry, Control J. Now these are the same object. So now when we press F, there we go. So now we make a face there. So we're going to unselect these bottom two here, and we're going to keep pressing F until all the faces have been filled in. And then we're going to go ahead and move down to the next object, and we're going to do the same thing. Pressing F to fill in all the faces until they're all filled in. Alright, perfect. And then press Tab to get out of edit mode. 1 on the numpad. Now I'm going to go ahead and press Shift A to bring in a cube. I'm going to go ahead and move that about there. We're going to scale it all the way down to about there. And then I'm going to move over and I'm going to scale it in on the Y a little bit. Not too bad. Actually, let's go ahead in orthographic view, top view, by pressing 7 on the numpad. We're going to press S and Y. We're going to scale this on the Y a little bit. You see here we haven't reset our origin to geometry. So right now our pivot point is right here. We need to go ahead and reset the origin point. So we're going to press Control Alt Shift C and then origin to geometry. Now we should be able to scale more evenly. So 7 on the numpad. Let's go ahead and bring this down a little bit more in the middle. We're going to scale on the Y. That's better. GY, we're going to move it down a little bit. Let's see what it looks like. Looks like it is actually pretty good. Okay, so now back to our cube. We're going to hit 1 on the numpad. We're going to press G to bring it down. And then we are going to go ahead and scale it on the x-axis by pressing S and C. I'm going to bring it in until it's centered and until these 2 points right here are basically touching our A-frame. Then we're going to press Tab to go to edit mode, Z to go to wireframe, and then A to deselect. Then we're just going to left click over these vertices here to select them. We're going to press S and X to scale them out a little bit, and then Tab. And then we're just going to repeat the process. We're going to just Shift D to duplicate this, and we're going to drag it up right above the other one. And I'm a little bit picky, so I want it pretty close. Then we're going to press S and X, and we're going to scale it on in. And that worked out perfectly, and we're going to continue on. Okay, now we're just going to do a little bit of bringing these down to make them a little bit tighter because I do not like that much space there. And we're going to move these vertices up a little bit to cover that hole. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and just select each one of these. We're going to Shift D, and we're going to drag them over here to the other side. I'm going to press Control 1 for the other side of orthographic view. If you ever make a mistake, like you want to look at the front and you press 1 on the numpad, if you press Control, that will put you on the opposite end of it. A little tip there to make it a little bit easier. So we're going to just move this in to about there. Okay, great. Now we just need to go ahead and make a roof. And for the roof, we're going to just do some shingles straight down. So we're going to actually go ahead and just use these that we already have made. We're going to just highlight them, Shift D to duplicate them, and then we're just going to put them in place. We'll press R to rotate them on the Y-axis. I'm going to press 7 on the numpad to line them up with our building. Now these, I'm going to go ahead and scale down a little bit. Let's scale them on the Y-axis to make them a little bit skinnier. And then we're going to go ahead and scale them up on the X-axis by pressing S, and then you're going to press X twice, which will scale it to the origin of the object. We're just going to put these in position here. It's like our rotation is slightly off. Great. So with that done, we're just going to go ahead and do what we've been doing and just duplicate this object. And we have a lot to duplicate, so we're going to just keep copying. Let's go ahead and delete the extras. Perfect. Select about 6 of these here, duplicate. Okay. Now we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. We're just going to select all of these this time. And then we're just going to Shift E. Looks like I selected something extra. Okay. So back into one, we're going to press Shift E to duplicate, and we're going to drag them over here. Then we're going to press RZ 180 degrees, and then we're just going to line them up. And that's pretty much it. If you decided you wanted to add a door, you could basically do the same thing. Grab a few of these, shrink them down, maybe put some wood on the back to make it look like it's being held on by something, and stick it in the hole. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and just make a floor just to make it look a little prettier and finished. So we're going to select these, Shift D, I'm going to bring them over here to about the middle. They don't have to be super perfect because the fact of the matter is that they're not really going to be seen only in a few views. So we're going to shift or scale on the x-axis there, make it fit inside the building. Just going to move it around till we get where we like it. And then just Shift D to duplicate these on top of the other ones. Which it's not the easiest to see in wireframe mode, but it's not too bad. You might have to squint your eyes. Yeah. And duplicate it one more time. And then maybe just grab these 3. We're going to Shift D and then just move it down on the y-axis. And we'll delete this one. We'll just scale this down on the Y to make it fit inside. And I feel like that one is overlapping, and it is. So is that one? Nope. You probably don't need to worry about fixing it the way I am, but I don't like it, so I'm going to go ahead and just make it fit in there a little bit better. Alright, there we go. And that's going to be the finish for the actual model, and it ended up being a little more vertices than I was expecting because I did the roof differently. If you wanted to do bigger planks or planks this way, you would have a lot less. But most of your vertices are coming from this roof here. And now that is going to complete our tutorial. I'd love to see what you guys make, so feel free to tag me on Instagram. I'll put my link right here in somewhere on the screen. And other than that, we'll see you in the next episode.